with another country, the final one for this week, knowing that we have many more to go still. So yeah, here we go with today's, which is Andorra, which is formerly known as the Principality of Andorra, or it can also be referred to as the Principality of the Valleys of Andorra, which is an independent landlocked micronation in the southwest region of Europe, situated in the Pyrenees Mountains, and is bordered by France and Spain. The current principality was established in 1278 under a charter in 988, and Andorra is known as a principality since it is a monarchy governed by two co-princes, which is the President of France and the Roman Catholic Bishop of Urgell. So yeah, here we go with the history. That's present day, but let's go with history for now, see how Andorra came to be. So here goes. The Valleys of as Andorra has been occupied for thousands of years, and there's artifacts dating all the way back to the Neolithic period, such as the jewellery and pottery that have been discovered in the area. And Bronze Age artifacts have also been found near settlements of La Serra de Inclar and Sidre, and there's been little documentation of this. And it's been speculated by historians that the Aboriginal occupants of the country were relative to the Basque people of northern Spain, and that Andorra was derived from Basque. And other tribes that settled in the country included the Iberians from the south and the Andalusianos. And at some point in this area, Andorra was a section of the Roman Empire. When the Roman Empire collapsed, Andorra became a gateway for the northern barbarian tribes to pass from the Roman provinces of Gaul into the provinces of Iberia, and a number of tribes such as the Vandals, the Visigoths and the Alans left traces of their passing through. And it's believed that the story of Andorra started with the Moor invasion of Spain, when the armies of the newly converted Berber Ibn Ziyad Tariq came across at Gibraltar when the Spanish King Roderick was defeated at Jerez de la Frontera, and the Moors spread into the whole of Spain, and the Christian peasants near the Pyrenees had to find refuge in a number of mountain valleys, including what would be later known as Andorra. And Moors were, however, defeated by Charles Martel de Tours in 732, but it still continued advance into the southern region of France, and the occupants of Andorra were not altogether pleased with the proposal of the Moors' raid, first asking for assistance from Charlemagne. Charlemagne fought against the Moors and drove the mass of Andorra and the neighbouring Spanish regions, and his aim was to stop the Moors from advancing into France. And when the French armies left, the Moors came back, and Charlemagne sent his son, Louis the Pious, to tackle them, and Louis defeated them in a battle near the plain where the Ferreira branches. After the battle, Louis established the borders of a small proto-state, and stationed a number of his soldiers in the villages, and created a new original yearly tribute to two trout. And he also put Andorra into the care of the newly established Count de Urgell, a knight who was tasked with protecting France from raids from the Spanish region of the mountains. And Charlemagne granted Andorra a charter in return for the part of it played during the fight of the Moors against the Moors, and the charter was called the Carta de Fundació de Andorra, and it established Andorra's sovereignty. The Counts of Urgell were known as the governors of Andorra, but from the 10th to 12th century there were lots of misunderstandings among the church officers, including the bishops, since it was not clear who held much authority with terms of both spiritual and feudal powers, and the Counts of Urgell made another grants to the bishop which transferred any outstanding rights to the bishop, thus confirming the power of the bishop. And at this time, several grants from the Church of Counts of Urgell and or the bishop were made by the Viscount of Castellbó, which were passed from Castellbó to the Count of Foix. He became heir to the Lord of Cabot via marriage, and the Count of Foix therefore became the secular ruler over the whole of Andorra. Now, when the conflict arose between the bishop and the council over Andorra, which was solved in the year 1278 by the signing of an agreement called the Acta de Peronge. The treaty was later on backed up by another treaty called the Magna Carta, and the Acta de Peronge stated that the sovereignty of Andorra, divided by the Bishop of Lascaux de Urgell and the Count of Foix. The agreement recognised the precepts of equality of rights shared by the two rulers, thus granting the small nation its terrain and political nature. And the treaty also stated that Andorra had to pay a yearly tribute called Questia, and this tribute alternated each year, first to the Count of Foix, then to the Bishop of Urgell, and so on, so forth. The tribute consisted of 4 hams, some wine and 40 loaves of bread. This agreement is still the foundation of Andorra's political sovereignty and the constitution, and tribute is still paid to the President of France, who is the successor to the Count of Foix, and to the Bishop of Urgell. In 1419, Andorra requested that co-rulers for permission to create a local parliament which would oversee local issues, and the request was granted, which led to the establishment of a council of the land. And the members of the council were selected by the heads of the household, and there were 4 representatives from the country's 6 parishes, making the total of memberships 24. And years passed as the title of co-prince of Andorra went through many hands on the French side of the border. There's Henry II of Foix, who was named Henry IV of France, thinking back to the French videos I did, like last week, and the title passed into royal rule, and Louis XIII confirmed the rights of Andorra, but in 1793 the French monarchy was brought down, and for 15 years that followed, Andorra did not have security of the French government, and the locals were worried that the Spanish ruler would use the chance to revoke their sovereignty, and in turn turn it into a subordinate region. And when Napoleon became Emperor of France, he issued an imperial decree on March the 26th, 1806, that re-established the governments of the French government and confirmed the people's rights of sovereignty. And in 1870, France became a republic, and that role of became one of the powers and duties of the President of the Republic. And during World War II, Andorra was neutral and was used as a smuggling route from Spain to France. And in 1958, Andorra made peace with Germany, after having been forgotten on the Treaty of Versailles, that broke again due to the end of World War One, and the conflict that had been extended due to lack of a peace treaty. Then there's King Boris I of Andorra, and in 1993 a number of Andorrans, some in high offices in government, as part of the attendance of Boris de Skazirev, a Russian, to declare himself as King Boris I of Andorra. A few days later, he was removed from power by guardsmen of the Bishop of Urgell, but the end result led in the firing of the members of the Council of the Land by the Tribunal de Cuts, which was the country's judicial authority. So as it makes a law in order that were not completely dissolved, the French government posted squads of grenadiers to maintain domestic order. Within a short period of time, the locals held elections and regionally organised a council of land. Men above 24 years were permitted to vote, and those above 30 were permitted to hold offices. And in the 1970s, when women were given the right to vote and hold office, in 1971, the required age to vote was lowered to 21. And in May 1993, Andorra officially became a parliamentary democracy after the approval of the new constitution for a referendum in March 1993. The constitution maintained the Spanish and French co-princes, but reduced and narrowed their powers, and civil rights were increased, including the provisions of its own judiciary and legislation, of trade unions and political parties. And in 1991, the country entered into a customs agreement with the European Community, which is now the EU, which we're now leaving. And on the 28th of July 1993, Andorra was given admittance into the United Nations. And today, Andorra is one of Europe's main duty-free shopping havens. The shopping constitutes a huge sections of the nation's economy, as tourism also makes up the remaining nation's wealth, with the main language spoken being Spanish, Catalan, Portuguese and French. And the President of the Executive Council is there's a small fly. The President of the Executive Council is the head of the government in the country, but the heads of state are still the Bishop of Urgell in Spain and the President of France. And the country is not a complete member of the European Union, but is a member of the Council of Europe, and Andorra does not take part in a number of European Union trade treaties and other global organisations, including the United UN. So yeah, I might have mentioned the languages a little bit, as Spanish, Catalan, Portuguese and French, and here we go. As Catalan, out of those languages, Catalan is the only one that is the sole official language, although Spanish, French and Portuguese are also spoken. As Catalan is a Romance language that is of course official, as it is also the most spoken language in the country, being 38.8% of the Andorran population speaking Catalan as their principal language, and all of the Andorran nationality speak language, and also 25% of the Spanish immigrants to the country, who constitute about 43% of the total population, also speak Catalan as their first language. And Catalan is the language that is used in government and the media of Andorra, and the street signs and other public and private signs in the country are mostly in Catalan. And the government of other countries further wishes to boost the use of the language by forcing the learning of a language country's immigrant workforce. And 3 classes are thus arranged to encourage the immigrants to the migrants to learn Catalan. Anyway, so moving on to those that aren't official, like Spanish. Although Spanish, Portuguese and French, and I'll be talking more about Portuguese when I'm doing a video on Portugal. But first of all, Spanish. As over 70% of the Spanish immigrants in Andorra speak Spanish as their main language. And Spanish became popular in the country after the arrival of such migrants between 1955 and 1955. I have a feeling there's a typo from the source I got it from, and say about 35.4% of the population of Andorra speak Spanish. Spanish can also be a medium of instruction in schools if parents select the language for the education of a child. And Spanish, and not Catalan, is more widely spoken between people in different linguistic backgrounds in the country. And to avoid it, the government has made effort to promote the use of Catalan among the migrant population. Yes, and then Portuguese, which is spoken by about 50% of the total population of Andorra. And the language became popular in the country after a large-scale influx of the Portuguese people from northern Portugal between the 1960s and 1980s. And 11% of the country's population is of Portuguese origin and speak the language in the country. There's also a small Brazilian population in the country that also speak the language. Then about 7% of the population speak French, and are French nationals, mainly immigrants from Francophone Africa. And these people speak the French language in the country. French is also taught at schools if the parents choose. And the Par de la Casa town on the Andorra's border with France has French as a dominant language spoken in the town. So yeah, that just about covers the languages. And then there's I managed to find 2-3 legends from Andorra. So yeah, then there's the legend of Meritxell. The legend of Meritxell is about the discovery of the original statue of the Virgin of Meritxell, and according to the legend it was from the 6th of January with the Feast of Magi. Villagers from Meritxell were going to Canilo to hear Mass, as was the custom, and they're surprised to find a wild rose in bloom on the roadside. And when they approached it, they saw at the foot of a bush of a statue of the Virgin and Child, and the statue was taken to the church at Canilo and placed in the chapel, and then the church was locked. And next day the statue was found missing and a search began, and some travellers said that they had seen a wild rose in flower and the statue under it. And villagers from Ancon then came and took the statue back to their church, but the next day the statue had disappeared again, and the villagers this time went back to the wild rose bush, and sure enough, the statue of a virgin was there. But something else strange happened. As they were making their way to the place, it had begun to snow. As it had approached the wild rose bush in the area of the size of a chapel was completely bare of snow. And Andorrans stood from the statue. This was their statue wanted to be there, and therefore they built a chapel there, and the oratory where it had been found, and over the years the chapel was enlarged, and in 1873 the General Council decided to officially proclaim the Virgin of Maritza as patroness of Andorra. Unfortunately, on the 8th or 9th of September 1972, the chapel burned down and the statue was destroyed. And the copy is now in the new Maritza chapel. And then there's the cross of 7 arms, as the cross in the legend was situated on the old road from Canilo to Maritza. And in fact 6 arms are not 7, and the reason for this is subject of a legend, as a poor youth who lived in the village of Prats was afraid that one day he would meet the devil, and the other young people decided to have fun at his expense, and they persuaded the youth to go to Canilo to fetch some wine for supper. To overcome his fears, they gave him a musket, and it was primed with flour. And when he arrived with Canilo, the innkeeper was busy, so the youth left the bottle on the counter, propped the musket behind the open door, and went for a walk in the village. And while he was out, the innkeeper filled the bottle and saw the musket. Finding it was badly charged it correctly. The youth returned, paid for the wine, and took the musket and set off home. And meanwhile, the 7 young lads had decided one of them would confront the youth on his way home while wearing a white sheet. But there was no danger, and so it happened. You thinking it was the devil fired a gun and ran home to say that he killed the devil. The others laughed at him, and they returned to the scene, but the lad in white sheets had disappeared. And the cross was erected then to remind the people of the consequences of unkind deeds. And the 7 arms represented the 7 lads, like boys, and mysteriously one disappeared, just as the lad in the white sheets had done. And then there's the Battle of Setúria, also known as La Font de Esmelicat. And the legend explains how the Comma de Setúria, magnificent grazing lands on the mountain summit of a mountain, came to be in parts of Andorra and not parts of Spain. And it didn't. In distant past, the shepherds of Oz in Spain and Pal in Andorra quarrelled about who had the grazing rights, and it was said that even the Andorran sheep would not mix with the Spanish ones, and no one seemed to be able to come up with a solution for it. And one day, however, it was decided that the answer was to have a wrestling match with a champion from each village, and the winner's village would win the grazing rights. And the champions were chosen, and one from Oz was tall and heavy, while one from Pal was strong built but very thin. And when the match began, the Spaniard led into the fight, but the Andorran dodged him and began to run. And then he came back again, and then he ran. And the Spanish champion was tiring, and the Andorran took the opportunity to jump on him and hold him down. The referee declared him the winner, and he was carried back to Pal in triumph, and so the Comma de Setúria became part of Andorra. So yeah, it's a nice one to kind of finish off the video with, so yeah. Andorra's an interesting little country in Europe. So yeah. It's like I don't actually know how I came to find out about Andorra, but I know about Andorra and now I'm telling it all about you. I'll pass it to you. What? And if you enjoyed the video, don't be afraid to like, share and subscribe for more. So yeah, bye for now.